Maybe one day I'll stop doing reflections on Psalm 63, but it's not going to be this day. Psalm chapter 63 verse 1 says, "O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water." Now, David did not come up with this simile out of thin air. If you go back and read the inscription right before this, it reads, "A Psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah." David was running for his life from King Saul, who 1 Samuel says had come out to seek his life. And Saul chased Daniel all across Judah, first to Gath, and then about 25 miles southeast to Ziph. And so David was tired and thirsty and hungry and fatigued. And so we would be well within our rights to think he might pray something like, "Oh God, I seek, I don't know, something to drink." He knew Israel's story, after all. He knew how God had provided sustenance to his people in the wilderness. He would have been more than biblically sound to pray for such things, and I see no reason to think God wouldn't have given him those things. But that's not what David prays for. David prays, "O God, earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you." David's circumstances had stirred up a deeper craving within him, going into the innermost depths of his identity, his soul. And that craving wasn't going to be satisfied by anything less than the living God. And he receives that satisfaction through, of all things, memory. Chapter 63, verses 5 through 7 says, "My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, when I remember you upon my bed, for you have been my help." David remembers all that the Lord has done to demonstrate that he is his help, that God has anointed David as king, and that God has protected David thus far from King Saul. And those memories of God's faithfulness are a delicacy to David's hungry soul, cultivating confidence not only for God's work in his life in the present, but also that God will continue to act on his behalf in the future. In her commentary of the Psalms, Beth Tanner writes, "This psalm, Psalm 63, encourages the one hearing to use memory to bring God closer." This psalm then is a perfect psalm for Lent, because in Lent our senses and our memory converge as we fast together and rehearse the story of Jesus' death and resurrection in our various congregations. And so the result is a comprehensive longing for God that moves beyond our minds into our bodies and indeed into our souls, the physical and the spiritual united in one act of prayer. And what I find so interesting, particularly with Holy Week ahead of us and Maundy Thursday ahead of us, is the ritual by which God satisfies that longing is also a unity of physical and spiritual. Paul writes, "On the night Jesus was betrayed, the Lord took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it, and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way also he took the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this, as often as you drink it, in remembrance of me.'" In Holy Communion, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, whatever you'd like to call it, David's prayer finds fulfillment as our souls are satisfied, not even as with fat and rich food, but with Jesus himself. Jesus himself answers our prayer, our hungers and our thirst for God and nothing else. And in communion we receive Jesus in an act of memory, reminding us that as he has been our help in the past and as he is our help now, so he will continue to be our help in the future.